Look, I don't wanna talk. How you try and press the kid and really you was soft. All you know is capping, homie, you don't know the law. Pedal to the metal, you ain't catching me in park. I just need to stop. I don't wanna speak. Talking all that good, so I just hit you with the please. Running up the score like Tyreek, I'm going deep. Watch me how I'm saucing, I be spreading it with ease. You don't tell peace.
G'day guys, and welcome to a video. I'm not going to do too much talking because we have a lot of jobs to get done, and this one's pretty exciting. My good friend Levi Clarkes has rang me up and asked me to put a floor pan, a tunnel, half a removable section for the tunnel at the front, a whole heap of bead rolled panels to get his Model A down to the gravy roast, which is in about 4 weeks time. So we have not a lot of time and a whole lot of work to do because he needs the car back to actually finish it. So I think I've got 4, maybe 5 days with it to try and make something happen. So I'm just going to take you straight up to the shed. We're going to have a look around this thing, and then I've got a massive list of jobs to do. So let's get to it. Man, Levi's Model A drift car, super bloody cool. Like, I can't you need to see this thing in the flesh. Like, the wheelbase is S15, so it's a model off of his actual competition drift car. And to show you actually how insane this thing is, like, my Corona, my XT130 is not a big car by any means, and the wheelbase difference is like a good half a meter of front of the car missing from Levi's car to the back. Like, the back of the Corona is lined up with the back of the bash bar on the Model A, and man, this thing's going to be a handful to drive. It's going to be sick. It's got a Toyota Sora front cross member, I think it is, front rack, so later on if he wants to, he should be able to get super amounts of locks out of it, and yeah, should be good to drive. CRG built some 50mm headers which look absolutely amazing. Full exhaust TIG welded all the way through it. Getting into what I need to do, it's all down in here. I need to build a full floor pan for this thing, which should be pretty straightforward, but also it's going to have some tricky bits because parts of the tunnel need to be removable, so you can get access to things, because being a Model A, it's super compact. I've already pulled the pedal box out of it. There's like this much room between the clutch pedal and where the gearbox tunnel is going to be, because it almost hits the gearbox, so that's going to be super tricky to get in there nice and tight so he can fit his foot in there to use the clutch. The seat is hard up against the roll cage here and also almost hits the tail shaft, so I need to put a couple of tail shaft loops in it, so if something happened to the tail shaft, Levi doesn't lose his hips or his legs or something else. And yeah, so I'm going to walk you through it as I do it. I'll try to keep it exciting. I'm excited. Get to finally use my bead roller, which I don't really get to use all that much, and make some pretty panels. So let's get into it. So I've just set a light up so you guys can actually have a look. Levi's already put this skeleton frame in. Chopped that bit of RHS in half in order to fit the tail shaft. So I'm going to have to do something a bit tricky there to put a loop over it and also put a tunnel in there. The shell is actually fiberglass. It's not steel. Yeah, I think a few people would cry if you actually drifted a steel body rat rod as cool as what it is. So I just got to finish welding up the frame because it's only tacked together. I did this part last night because I had a couple of minutes spare before I went to bed and got really excited. So I need to weld the other side, put some bars in to mount his seats, and then start making some templates and a plan for the floor. Flip this exhaust clamp over. I'm going to cut a couple of extra bits off the gearbox that aren't really necessary and give me more room when I make the tunnel. So yeah, enjoy. update for you. I've welded in the braces for the seats, for the seat mounts, the 4 bits of 25x50 RHS. I am now looking at how I'm going to lay out the floor, make my templates, and get it ready to bead roll some panels. So the next thing I've found is the standard gearbox crossmember on this chassis that the shell is sitting on actually sits up and a little bit over the side of the rails, and I want the floor to sit flush with those rails. So I'll show you what I mean really quickly. So on this side here, you can see that this rail actually comes up and then dips down in here, whereas I want the floor to sit flush with all of these rails here. So what I've done on this side, if you can see it, is I've actually cut a chunk out of here and then lowered this whole bit of the crossmember down and welded it in. So I'll give that a quick grind and a linish, bit of a sand, and then that'll look ready for the floor to go in. So now I just got to repeat those steps on the other side, lower that, weld it in, and yeah, stay tuned. Hopefully tomorrow afternoon, maybe Friday, we can start making some panels for this thing. Yo! I've now lowered those 2 bits of the gearbox crossmember from the frame. So now that sits nice and flat. This edge here, I've caressed this a little bit to knock it down so it's nice and flat with the floor now. Done that the same on the other side there. I've also just noticed that there's nothing actually holding the cab on. And I kind of towed it home like that. So I assumed there'd be a bolt or something somewhere holding the cab onto the frame, and there's not. So right now I'm just going to cut some little bits of 50mm flat bar and weld them onto the chassis behind the cab and also in front, which should locate it, because as I'm making the floor in the tunnel, I don't want that to move at all. And then later on I can box that in and make it pretty, but for right now I just need to stop it from moving. So I'm going to move on to that. I've jacked the car up, it's now up on jack stands. I don't know why I didn't do this before, because I can sit in here and I can make things and my legs don't go to sleep. This is bloody awesome. So what I've done, I've made 4 of these little 50mm plates with a 8mm hole in the end, and the plan is to just put them down in the corners, like down there. This one will go down in here, like so. They'll get welded onto the rails, and then I can put a bolt from the outside of the firewall in through, and that'll pinch the fiberglass down to the chassis and it'll stop it from moving because it's under shear up and down and forward and back. Super simple, that'll hold it down. Then I can make everything else that I need to make, not worry about the cab moving anymore. The rear ones, I'm not going to use that 50mm plate. I'm going to cut it at probably 100mm long, and I'll show you why tomorrow. It'll be way, way better. But yeah, I'll quickly do that, and then tomorrow we'll get into some more exciting stuff. This is what the rear cab mount plates ended up looking like. I'll show you where they're going and after they're welded in. So down in there. All right. So that's the rear cab mounts done, welded in. The reason, that's the inside. So the whole reason that that has been bolted on that plate from the outside is the back of the cab actually dips down in a big concave, and Levi wants to be able to pull the shell off and be able to drive the car like normal. So I've got to make the floor so the shell can still come off. So I can't, make panels that join that interfere with that concave, because if you got a panel coming across when that shell comes down and under it, you won't be able to get the shell actually off in front of the floor. So I might have to make some removable panels. Also, with those plates being on the outside, it means the body can come down and rest on top of them, and those bolts are under shear. Like right now, the cab is solid. It's one with the body. It's only got 4 bolts. We can weld those nuts in from the back at a later date when the shell actually comes off. Everything can be cleaned up, we can radius the corners, make everything look super pretty. But for now, that's the cab mounted. Now we can move on to the floor and making a plan as to how we're actually going to fit everything and make everything tie in how it's supposed to. We have 2 tail shaft loops, just quickly bent them up. I just got to trim the bottom off to the right size so they sit close to the tail shaft, weld them in tomorrow morning. I've also cut all the extra bits off the gearbox which protrude out that we don't really need to be able to squeeze the tunnel in a little bit closer, down here near the reverse sensor. Down there, and there's also a little bit off the back here which I trimmed off. Trying to just get as much room as what we possibly can. Tomorrow morning we will weld those 2 tail shaft loops in and start making some panels, finally. I've now got the template for the tail shaft roughly where I want it, good enough so I can trace it onto the steel, cut the panel out, bead roll it where I want to. I'll make a few marks on it and then test fit that, and then we will cut the rear firewall to actually poke it through the back of the firewall, and I'll leave it overhanging by probably 10 mil. And then we can move on to the transition piece from that onto the back of the gearbox. From there we'll then build the front half of the tunnel and then go from there to the firewall, and then the floor will be last. So here's what I'm up to so far. cut the rear firewall, heap of trimming on this to make it fit, but that is pretty much good to go in now. So yeah, I'll tack that in and we'll move on to the transition between this piece and the start of the gearbox tunnel. Transition piece, managed to get it cut out, folded, swaged, sanded back and roughly fit in. So managed to get that done just before nightfall, so I don't want to go cutting and grinding too much to annoy the neighbours. So tomorrow morning I'll trim that up, make that fit, and we'll get onto the front half of the gearbox tunnel, and then after that the floor pan, into the exciting stuff. So I'll see you guys bright and early. We've now got that transition piece fitted, trimmed up, tacked in place. Very happy with how it fits onto the tail shaft tunnel. I've got it nice and tight. Now we're going to move on to making the start of the gearbox tunnel, and the front half of that will be removable, so we'll have to have a bit of forward thought in how we make them. I'm going to see if I can swage a lip at the end and also bend it. I haven't done that before, so I'll see how it goes. That way when I get the two panels that overlap each other, they'll actually sit flush, but I'm not sure what the bender will do to it, having that swage in it, whether it'll make it look crap or not, but we'll give it a go. Here's what the transition piece looks like all tacked in. Super annoying. I just wrecked that panel and now I've got to start again, all because I couldn't work out why I couldn't turn the corner sharp enough on the bead roller. I was going the opposite way to what I normally go, so it's a little bit more tricky, but it should have still went around the corner. This gear actually, the grub screw just came out of it and the gear actually came off the shaft, so this whole shaft could float in and out. So as I was trying to turn, it was actually separating the two dies. So that just wrecked that panel, so I got to quickly cut another one, mark it out and try again. Take two, let's go. Alright, so I'm very happy with how this front half of the tunnel piece fits in the car. It fits on the transition piece super tight in around here, so it should be nice and easy to weld. A little bit of overhang on the bottom, but that sits inside the rails, which will get it away from Levi's feet enough, because that clutch pedal is super tight, so this next bit will be a bit interesting to make. Bit of forward thought, the front half of the bell housing section has to be removable. So I'm going to put some nutserts in here now, because doing it in the car will be a little bit tricky because my nutsert gun's so big, and I'd rather do it with air than do it manually because I'm bloody lazy. So do that and then we'll weld it in. I've got the start of the removable bell housing bit of the tunnel sitting in there now, and it actually fits super good. I'm very happy with it. I swaged a tiny little 5mm lip on the end so I can start welding new sections from that to the firewall off of there, and I also need to bend over some tabs for the end of that so I can actually bolt it to the fiberglass shell. I was going to swage up a firewall for it so the whole thing looked pretty from front to back, but I don't have enough time to do that, and also my bead roller doesn't have a deep enough throat to do it in one go, so I'd have to do it out of a few pieces and it'd just take too much time. Just for now, we will bolt it to the firewall, and if later on Levi wants to do a firewall or a rear firewall, we'll do that. But for right now, I'm just going to keep moving on. All I have to do now is drill the holes in that, and then that'll be bolted on, and then I can start making some templates and making the rest of the removable section. So I'll show you what it looks like now. Very happy with how it looks. Alright, that's what my template ended up looking like for the gearbox tunnel that goes onto the firewall. I quickly made that up just before we ran out of light and tacked that in, and it fits pretty well. The last thing I have to do is I just made 2 more templates for the lower half sections, which are just behind the clutch pedal and at the passenger's footwell. So tomorrow I'll make them up and weld them in, but the tunnel is pretty much done, and this is what it looks like all tacked together. So as you can see, the clutch is quite close down there to the tunnel, so it's why we had to squeeze this part in. So the next part should just miss it because that is the end of its travel. So super tight and fiddly, but yeah, it's turned out pretty good. So tomorrow we'll finish off those 2 tiny little fill-in panels, and I'll put a 50mm return on them so we can bolt them actually to the firewall, and then it's just 4 bolts each side of the firewall. These 6 bolts which are up on top of the tunnel here, and then that whole front section will then be removable. So that should be pretty cool. And yeah, that's it. We'll get into it tomorrow. now got the tunnel pretty much finished. It's all tacked together and in there for good, and I'm pretty bloody happy with how it sits. It's not perfect, but for what this thing is, it's meant to be a rat rod drift car, not a show car. So I think Levi's going to be absolutely stoked. I'm very happy with it. So it's only tacked together. I now need to pull everything apart, weld it all out, you know, file finish it and put it all back in for good. Weld the tunnel in, then make the floor. But so far today is Wednesday and no, Tuesday. Sorry, today's Tuesday afternoon. I've organised for a good friend of mine, Paulie from Section, to come and take some photos of all of the work that I've done for my resume, and then I will deliver the car to Levi and I'll try and film as much as I can, as I'm not going to show him anything until the car's finished. But so far I'm stoked and over the moon, and I'm sure he will be too. Here's what it looks like just tacked together. Surprise guys, my GoPro died last night, so I didn't actually get to film much of me making the template and cutting this sheet out. But we've now got the floor in there. I've clear coated in. I'm just going to spot weld it in, and then once it goes up on the hoist back at Levi's, I'll throw a few welds underneath the floor just to stop it from vibrating or moving around, whereas the whole rest of it will get seam sealed. So it should look super nice when it's done. This is what the floor looks like, and we'll move on to the back tomorrow, and then Saturday it goes back. I've also started making a template for that back piece there. I'll cut that out in the morning. I'll cut another one for the passenger side and swage them up. Hopefully tomorrow we can get the entire floor finished, then I can move on to the finishing little touches like making the gear boots around and mounting his hydraulic handbrake. Front part of the floor all done, rear parts all clear coat in. Got to drop the middle of that panel down just for floor clearance. All of these I've put down instead of up. That just helps with, you know, there's no room down here for where the pedals are, so Levi's, like the pedal's probably down here and Levi's foot's going to be up here somewhere. So the exhaust is right under the floor there, so we can't actually drop it down and kick it out to get his feet in there, so it's going to be a little bit awkward, but this whole car is exactly that. It's very awkward, so he'll just have to learn to drive it as it is, as it's something different, super small, and yeah, built on a budget. So going to swage this panel now, bead roll the center, drop it down just so it follows suit with the rest of the floor, weld that in, then make a weird little transition piece from the back to cover up the firewall. That'll probably be bolt in and bolt out as well, as he wants to be able to pull the shell off and leave all the rest of it in. So yeah, enjoy. floor finished. It's all sitting in there now. It's all spot welded in all the way from the front all the way to the back. Tunnel's fully welded. I've just knocked the top of the spot welds off on this side, on the passenger side, so I still have to do the driver's side. Some people like to leave them in there, so if you ever have to unpick a panel, it's easy to see where they come from. I like to knock the tops off so the floor looks like it's one piece from the front to the back half, but each to their own. Some people are different and just do things differently. So I'll show you what the difference is between this side and the driver's side before I knock the driver's side down. But that's it, almost finished, ready to go back to Levi. I just have to make 2 infill panels for the back here, and also the infill panel that goes around the gear stick. So we'll do that, and tomorrow's Friday, so Saturday morning we will take it back down to Levi and see what he thinks. Alright guys, we have made it. It is Friday night and I've just finished making those filler bits for the rear firewall down into the floor. The floor's finished, it's sanded, the entire floor, the tunnel, the removable section. I've also just finished the gear boot surround, which is a removable piece as well. The rear firewall sections that are that trim piece that goes from the floor up to the firewall, that is bolted to the firewall and also to the floor. So when he takes the shell off, he just has to unbolt that from the floor and that will lift off, and it also gives it something to rest on when it comes down. So I'm super happy with how this thing turned out. You know, it's not perfect, but for something that I've done in my shed with, you know, pretty basic equipment, I just put a lot of time into it. I think this owes me about 70 hours over. It ended up taking me 6 days. A lot of night work and stuff as well, because it's not my full-time job. It's just a hobby at the moment. One day hoping to make it a full-time job. But yeah, I'm super happy with how this thing's turned out. It just needs to be seam sealed and a few little bits here and there touched up depending on the direction that Levi wants to go with the shell itself. So the outside filler panels where the doors meet need to be filled in and stuff as well, but that'll probably have to be done from the bottom, otherwise you won't be able to get the shell off around the roll cage. So yeah, I'll show you guys what it looks like, and I'm super happy. I can't wait for him to see it tomorrow. little signature there. That's our Car Make Revive gear knobs that we make in-house. Very, very happy. I can't stop looking at it. It's super, super cool. You know, it's not perfect, but I'm very happy for my first attempt at a full sheet metal floor, tunnel, removable section, all that stuff. It's not easy to do, but hoping to get better, and I'm super, super stoked. I know I've said it a few times, but genuinely very happy. So on to another video, I suppose. Hopefully I'll get to do a little bit on my XT130 soon. Catch up on a few more jobs and then we'll get stuck into that. But yeah, until the next video, where I'm sure I'll find something else cool to cut up and yeah, make new. Until then, see you soon.
I'm not going home with y'all.
What are we doing, mate?
We're gonna load up Levi's car and take it back to him. Very excited. He's gonna love it. Paulie's just come around and taken a heap of photos of it out here in the sun. So yeah, I can put that on my channel and on my social media and stuff, show people what we're capable of, and getting it done, taking it back. Is this your car? Oh my god. Who did this?
You
Who did this?
You did this, man.
Pat yourself on the back, brother. You've earned it.
So strong, Steve.
Dude, I almost lost this, eh?
This car here.
Yeah, when me and Levi put it on the trailer, we had it hooked up to his dad's winch, which is like, it's on a hill like this, bro. And then the winch was wrapped around the bar and it was just wrapped around and looped back on itself.
Yeah.
And then the rope went loose because it got stuck on the beaver. And then when we pushed it, it broke that little safety clip on it.
Yeah.
And then it came off. Dude, it took off at 100 miles an hour. I was like back here. And I put my leg like inside the back bar to try and stop it. It just dragged me with it. Levi's like was in here like this, like trying to hang on to it, and then he got like sandwiched between it. And the wheel is perfect diameter fit between here and there, and it just stopped, man. It didn't do anything. Like it took off.
It's on there.
So just on the way down to Levi's, he got called out to a family breakfast, so I've got 2-3 hours to play around with this a little bit more. So I thought I'd quickly mount his electric power steering pump, which looks like this. I'm pretty sure this is a Mercedes one. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that's a Mercedes electric power steering, so hydraulic still. I've just made a quick little bracket off the back of the frame here next to the fuel cell to tuck it down inside the rail. I'll show you what I've done there. I've also welded 2 tie down points down here, 2 eye bolts, one there, because how I hold my car on, I've done the same thing. I just use these chains, clip them on, roll forward, do a bit of a burnout, the chain center, and then 1-2 straps on the front. Super easy to tie your car down. It takes like less than a minute. It's the best thing I've ever done. So I told Levi I'd do that for him. I'll show you this bracket and then we'll head down to Levi's house. So yeah, that plate at the bottom there just lets the pump sit down, takes all the weight. The little tab with the 2 bolts at the top, that just stops it moving around right to left, up and down. So super simple. On to the next thing.
Wow. Oh, how sick is that, man? Wow.
So yeah, that whole bell housing part just unbolts with those 6 bolts up and over the top.
Yeah.
And that should just slide out.
Bro. I can't believe you've made room for that.
It's in there.
Bro. You worked some magic in there, eh?
She's,
It looks like a car. What do you reckon? Do you reckon we just like paint it, clear it?
If you want to clear it, yeah.
What do you think? I don't want to paint that.
If you want to clear it, yeah, you can clear it.
How did you work all this out? Did you have to do all this before you folded, obviously, eh?
Yeah. Yeah, so you got to swage it before you fold it.
Oh, and you full bead,
Yeah.
put a bead around the hat.
Yeah, so that's all nut soldered in, so you can pull that out and pull your shifter out and around and whatever. But yeah, there's 2 rails in here as well. So there's one in the middle of that and then about there.
Yeah.
And that's what the seat will bolt down to.
Oh, yeah.
So they're just 25 by 50 bolted across.
Yeah.
And yeah, the
So I can even make, for that side, if I do it, I can make a box section to sit it on to raise it up a bit, eh?
yeah. So whatever you want to do and raise it up, yeah, you got a rail there and a rail there, same on that side.
Yeah.
So yeah, pretty much that joint is in the center of that bar, so you got like 25 mil roughly each side.
Yeah. I love this too, eh? That's a great idea.
Yeah, so that is bolted to the firewall and also to the floor.
Yeah.
So when you want to pull the cab off, undo the bottom 2 in the floor only,
Yeah.
and then that'll stay with the cab. So when you sit it down, it'll give it something to rest on. And also as you come back down, so
I didn't know you were even doing anything there, man.
well, I wasn't going to, and then there's a big hole there. And also the shell was moving around when I was trying to do the tunnel.
Yeah, okay.
So I've put 2 plates down the
Yeah,
front, and then 2 at the back there. And they're also on there so you can lift the shell off,
Yeah.
because otherwise they'll interfere with the way this comes down like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So these ones are on the outside.
Yeah.
So yeah, they just come down and sit down. Because I had to cut that little bit of a head on there,
Yeah.
and then that tech screw off that side as well. But yeah, I just feel like filling in these gaps here, I'd probably put a bit of plate off the bottom of that, like
bottom, you reckon,
come
yeah?
up 10 mil.
Yeah.
Once the doors and everything are on,
Yeah.
just put a bit of sheet or something under it, trace around the outside of it,
Yeah.
and then cut like 5 mil off the inside, put
Yeah.
a pinch weld or something around it,
Yeah.
a bit of rubber, and then that'll seal it from shit coming in.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Dude.
the only thing I'd do is I'd probably just seam seal that weld,
Yeah.
and that'll just stop shit trying to seep in under, because the floor and the tunnel's different,
Yeah, okay, yeah.
and then it'll also stop it from
Well, you
rusting.
spot welded all this too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's yeah. So if you wanted to, you can also drill and put bolts through that bit of the tunnel to the firewall where
Yeah.
I put that return lip on.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm not sure what it'll do when you drive it if it vibrates. Just put a bolt through it.
Yeah.
But
That is so cool.
yeah, I change your gear knob too.
What we got? Oh, yeah. Nice. That was just an eBay thing too.
The Nismo one that was on there.
Yeah.
I was like, I had to look through my collection. Like I've got one there that'll fit it.
Is that like an OG one too?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. So it'll be a bit tight where your feet are, but
Oh, it'll always,
It-
it'll always
it'll be what it'll be. We'll
Yeah.
probably have to, I reckon we'll have to put a bar or something down through there to that rail.
Yep.
Because if someone doors you there, it's where
Yeah.
your feet are
We're
going to be.
getting a bit worried because I've been looking online and a lot of people do run that bar
Yeah.
for the support as well, because otherwise there's nothing supporting the front. It's just literally
Yeah,
on that joint down there.
yeah. So yeah, I reckon that'll be after the accelerator pedals in, work out where that bar can go.
Yeah.
But yeah,
The Papa feels like a car.
dude, it's ridiculous, eh?
Oh.
Like, it's
I
very
love
cool.
the shape of it all too, man. I did not. Yeah.
Because yeah, I wasn't sure whether to do an oval one, a round tunnel, or do it like that, like more of a trapezoid shape. But I like that style.
I like this
better.
style too, yeah. For what it is.
Yeah. I've been looking at shells.
Have you?
I was like, I want to do one now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bro, imagine 2 of them on there.
Yeah.
Look, I don't wanna talk. How you try and press the kid and read it, you was soft. All you know is capping, homie, you don't know the law. Pedal to the metal, you ain't catching me in park. I just need to stop. I don't wanna speak. Talking all that good, so I just hit you with the please. Running up the score like Tyreek, I'm going deep. Watch me how I'm saucing, I be spreading it with